This morning we have a special guest, Nassim Haramein, and today he's director of research and the Resonance Project Foundation and the Hawaii Institute for Unified Physics, where he leads a team of physicists, electrical engineers, mathematicians, and other scientists to explore the frontier of unification principle. And I was very amazed, when I look at some information that is online. So. You predict many events, and when I'm looking at
I published a paper, and within a few months, a new measurement was done in an accelerator in Switzerland, and it was more precise than the 2010 measurement. And sure enough, I was, inside the margin of error of that experiment as well, and even closer to the value that had been found.
So people have to understand
what does it mean, like what does the theory say? If the theory is correct, what does it mean? And in like a very overarching idea of the theory is what it means is that everything is connected through this field of information that is at the base of quantum theory, like below subatomic particle, below everything, there's this field of information that we call vacuum fluctuations.
And now I see two things here. First is this, geometry, that we see there, and I think, it's pretty amazing because that geometry linked with the tetrahedron kind of structure.
Absolutely.
So is it explained, because sometimes we speak about non-locality, information. We had an experiment done a few times ago online, and we were speaking about, intention that is carried on in non-locality.
Right.
So now we can think that this geometry, organization inside the is the carrier of the information.
Exactly. And now it makes sense how, like, really esoteric things that occurs, like, that seem magical, that seem impossible, like remote viewing or, remote healing, all these things, you can start to see, oh, this could be the mechanism how this is possible. If all the information of all other things in the universe is present in each proton, and you had access to that because you're made out of protons, right? Then you could remote view. You could have the information of something that's on the other side of the world that you're not, able to see with your own eyes, or but if you access that information, you could do that, and and starts to make things that seems really esoteric and really impossible. Now you start to see the possibility of it, and as well things in quantum theory that didn't make so much sense neither, like entanglement, spooky action at a distance. Einstein called it. Yeah. Like, why does a particle here, when I change its state, this other particle over there changes at the exact same time?
Well, because all these protons are interconnected together.
And they're interconnected. Nothing is ever isolated from anything else.
Absolutely.
Because this field is connecting everything together.
That relate with Taoist medicine, the I Ching, and the organization. You have some your model can also bridge with this kind of understanding. Where we have this model of I-Ching, and I don't know if we can play the video, Alexei, where
there's the I-Ching.
The I-Ching, and then you have this model here where you have
you take each lines of the I-Ching, of the symbols of the I-Ching, and you match the opposite symbol of the I-Chings together, you get, in 3D, you get a star tetrahedron structure, which is the base of this foundation for the geometry of space-time that I describe at the Planck level in my paper. So it's really remarkable that was present, thousands and thousands of years
ago. And this ancient model of healing had probably to do with this kind of information too.
Exactly.
That this is the thing.
Yeah, because the I Ching, for instance, and it was pretty complete, because the I Ching, for instance, was always associated with the yin and yang. And if you look at the yin and yang, now you have the the twisting, the spinning.
Yeah, we have this one too here.
Yeah, there you go.
This is very interesting.
Yes. So I realized that when you look at the yin and yang symbol, the black dot is in the white and the white dot is in the black. So it's counterpolarized. So I was thinking, how can the black get to the white and the white get to the black? And the only way you could do it is if it's connected through a wormhole, you know, torus structure, and so that each one has access to the other through the polarity of the field of a torus in 3D. And then when you put it together, you end up with the yin yang.
This is very fascinating. And then we have in Taoist medicine what Marguerite de Suranné called the atomic heart, and is also, I think, kind of an inspiration of the I Ching and how this I Ching spread. First in 2 here we have the atomic heart, and then, you know, they divide in 8, and then in 12 meridian, 64 I Ching.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, you know, the idea was also to find imbalance. Imbalance related with some behavior or some kind of emotion. So I believe in that time they had probably some way to translate fractals in behavior, maybe. I don't know what you think about that. This is kind of a stretch here, but you know, this come from somewhere, this science.
Right, absolutely, because, you know, if we're made of this fundamental field and it's permeating everything, then, you know, instinctively, would eventually, throughout civilization, we'd start seeing it emerge in our traditions and all this stuff. And so I think people, through meditation, you know, which is going inward towards the center of our existence and so on, may have been able to access this field and learn to manipulate it, you know, in healing modalities all around the world. And, I mean, many ancient civilizations talked about the prana or mana in Hawaii.
Mana in Hawaii, absolutely.
Yeah, and the chi and all this stuff. And I think you know, when you look at the proton, for instance, it's the most stable. I mean, no proton has ever been seen to decay. I mean, we collide these things, we do all this stuff to them, and they stay extremely stable because they have this relationship between the inside and the outside that's in a metastable state. So, you know, if we were to philosophically apply that to the biology, when that stability is upset, right, when there's an imbalance, then there probably is a breakdown in the information between cells. I think that would be a possibility for like the source of disease, you know, and other things. Yeah, and like mental illness and all this. You know, that this sense of isolation, whether it's a cell, you know, that's no longer able to communicate properly
with the other,
or a being that feels isolated, disconnected from their peers, and so on, you know, despair, all these things may, you know, you could almost link it back. It is a stretch, but you can almost link it back to this fundamental pattern. And if you if you can bring that to the people, if people understand it and all of a sudden can visualize it and use it in their practice, all of a sudden it may be possible. And as well, I mean, there's incredible application to technology. That's why Einstein was saying, you know, we have to figure out a way to connect quantum theory with relativistic equation.
He didn't like it at the beginning.
No, he didn't.
I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what
Although he was one of the person that started quantum theory, he didn't believe the universe was a result of some random fluctuation with no heads of tails. You know, his famous statement, "I'll never believe that God is playing dice." You know, like that it's all random and you know, and this fundamental structure. He even made statement that when a unified field would be found, it probably would be fairly simple. And that's one of the criticism I get from my peers, is that it's too simple.
It's too simple, and you get rid of the strong and the weak force.
Right, right.
This is, you know,
Yeah.
taking out of the park some toys they were playing with
Yeah,
it. So
sacrilege. So and as well, he said that it would probably be a simple or an elegant algebraic geometric solution, and that's exactly what was found. So I think that it has some merit.
yeah, and he said something too that has made me smile. You know, when they prove that his theory was working, one journalist asked, you know, and what's happened if it will not have been proven?
Mm-hmm.
He said, it cannot be possible because it's too beautiful.
That's right.
It's too beautiful.
It
And
is-
that theory has to work because this is beautiful. And you
it's
said
gorgeous.
you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. I get gravity from the surface to volume ratio of little fluctuating vacuum entities. You know, it's a simple equation. It's just basically a ratio between the number of oscillators on the surface. So imagine the surface oscillating and the number of oscillators on the inside. And then I multiply it by the Planck mass, which is the mass of one of the oscillator, and you get the exact gravitational force.
So, to imagine you know, when you speak of this degree of mass or degree of this, it's very hard for the mind to just figure this out. You know, it's almost
know.
impossible.
It takes some gymnastic of the mind.
Yeah.
I've been going at it for 30 years or 25 years, so I'm kind of used to it. I forget how, you know, it can be a little difficult. It can hurt a little bit, but it's only temporary.
Yeah, a little headache, right? And now we see the fractal
Yes.
inside structure.
Yeah.
And then I think through your exploration you find these fractal structure in
galactic structures and you know, supernova.
supernova. But I mean, you let's say the flower, the what is the name of this one? You find this on temple and all this.
Oh, yeah,
There's a
that's
link
right.
with ancient civilization.
Oh,
too.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The ancient civilization had this type of geometry everywhere in their temple, in their text. Even Da Vinci was drawing it everywhere. You know, you can see here on the
Yeah.
food dog, and the food dog in these traditions was considered the guardian of knowledge, and the knowledge that the food dog was guarding was under his paw, right? He was guarding the knowledge. And so, and you look under the paw, and what do you have? You have a sphere with these, you know, pixelation structure right on the sphere, like, which is the exact solution to gravity that I found. I mean, it's remarkable. And this stuff is thousands and thousands of years old. So maybe they were trying to tell us something really, really deep about the structure of creation, because they didn't think of these as nice artwork. They thought of this as very sacred art, very important. You know, they were the basis of their teaching about the structure of the universe and how things work. And maybe they were right, because the math comes out right for it when you use this kind of geometry. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. And you know, when these guys talked about, even in those traditions, especially in the Chinese tradition and so on, in the Taoist tradition and all this, when they talk about influencing the qi, you know, working with the qi and influencing the qi and all this for healing purposes, or you know, in martial art and all this stuff, they do incredible things that you don't think is possible, you know, that have been documented. Maybe if you're able to visualize the geometry, and if you're able to, like, get in this zone,
Space, yeah.
in this space where you're connected, where you feel the connection, right? Maybe you can influence it and make things happen that you wouldn't think would be possible in other cases.
Yeah, now we open the door to application.
Right.
And this is where already some people are also experiencing with crystal, because crystal, in some way, you can imprint these
Right.
you know, these
yeah.
geometry.
Yeah, crystals have very highly structured molecules. Typically, they're tetrahedral, hexagonal geometry.
Exactly.
And so all of a sudden, water molecule is the same. You know, all of a sudden you see, wow, water can be influenced, crystals can be influenced. And if you do these technologies, and some of the experiments I've done already, you know, we're using crystal and plasmas together and all this stuff. There is a path to a whole new
I can see that.
yeah.
Because the idea, when you start to understand how work the field, and not only vaguely, but the structure of the field, and then you can think at disease like unbalance, you know, or disconnection, you know, using this different technology, working at a more subtle level, can reorganize the physical aspect. You know?
That's right.
This is probably where we are heading in the next
Century.
decennies.
Yeah,
I would say decennies, very close to that maybe. We know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're actually not far at all, because we have the technology today, meaning we have all we need. If this is true, and now we have the math, because I mean, a lot of the issues that occurs in biological structures had to do with, you know, information disconnection, you know, areas. In one way, you could think of it as areas that lose resolution, that lose coherency, like they become somewhat.
Yeah, I like that too. Coherence.
Yeah, they lose coherence, right? Because, like, for instance, if you look at, you know, the water in the body is typically highly structured, right? Highly coherent and highly structured. If you look at cancer cells, the water in there is very incoherent,
Disorganized.
Disorganized.
Yeah.
And so, if you have an influence on the field, right, that creates coherency, that generates high coherency in the water structure in the first place, you know, and everything else, then if you can beam that coherent, like if you can create a coherent environment, then that water can become coherent again.
Exactly.
And now you might be able to have a large influence in that disease, on that disease, so that everything goes back to balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are doing already some research. We spoke about this previously with quantitative EEG, you know, brain mapping.
Yes.
Where we can see incoherence and coherence and, you know, different type of waves. And when people absolutely are in a coherent environment, you know, they can restructure health. But,
all right.
So, but...
right.
You know, now it's like adding technology to that.
Right.
Because
like an amplifier of coherency, you know, like it would be, it could be really, really powerful, you know, and so it's really an amazing thing. You could think of the brain, you know, instead of thinking that consciousness is in the brain, you could think of the brain as like an antenna, like a radio set, tuned in to certain frequency of the information structure of the vacuum. And so that everybody's tuned into a little bit different frequency. That's why we're all a little bit different, because we observe the fractal from our position, so we get a little bit different information than anybody else. And so we're tuned into that frequency, but then sometime our radio set is a little bit off. You know, it's like, you know, when you're tuning your radio, like sometimes it's clear and then you go a little bit off and it's like, you know, there's a lot of noise, right? So when the brain goes into coherency, it's just like a radio set. I mean, if you look at the oscillator in the radio set, when you go into resonance of the sync circuit in there, it becomes no noise, right? And so the brain is acting a little bit like that. And I'm doing research with William Brown, Dr. Brown, and others that are mapping the microtubules in the brain and how, like, these things could be like teeny antennas. They're little tube, you know, vortex structure that have water in the middle of it, like, and all this, and how this could be like the antenna interacting with the vacuum and the information moving through that antenna. And some work was done previously by Penrose, a very famous physicist, on it, and as
Oh, yeah.
well. Yeah, so it's right, like all the greatest discovery, they didn't come from without in general, right? Meaning there might be precursors or hints that came from without, but generally it's because
Within.
the researcher had a gut feeling, an instinctive feeling,
Exactly.
something. You know, Einstein talked about it. Many, you know,
Yeah, Dr. Goswami speak about quantum creativity, and
right, and so
it's like an insight, you know, it's a
Exactly.
aha moment.
right, and we even call it insight
Mm-hmm.
because it comes from inside
Exactly.
us,
Yeah.
and so that's the link, you know, to the universal consciousness, to the universal information network. Literally, us going towards the proton, going towards the inside that of what actually makes us, and then there comes another unification, right, in this view, which is the unification between spiritual people that tend to think it's all within, and scientific people that tend to think it's all without, that we don't have anything to do with it. And so now you can start to see, oh, actually it's together.
It's a dynamic model.
It's a dynamic model.
Within, without, and then this.
Yeah, feedback structure. And so when you go within, you all of a sudden have access to information, and deeper you can go, more information you can get, right? And so eventually you can have people that all of a sudden talk about, like these masters that talk about enlightenment, where they felt like they could answer any questions you could throw at them in the universe and all this stuff. This sense of unity with the whole universe. You know, you're like this little bitty thing on the surface of this little bitty planet with the around this little bitty sun relative to the universe and all this, but you still have this feeling of connectivity with the whole thing. You know, it makes sense, because if you go within in that point, you can
Singularity. You connect with the whole universe.
Yeah, you plug in. It's
where all information is.
Right. It's like getting on the
Absolutely.
net, you know?
Exactly.
And we may be able to reproduce that technologically, so that we could take the information that's over here and send it across the other side of the galaxy over there without having to go between all the points in between, because it's already all connected. You see, so like...
Yeah, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. And the theoretical model that sustain, you know, what they are doing is, I know this because I'm, you know, building this university now for years, is so important. Because it's like before these people had the intuition, they knew things, they intuit things. But they go around and people say, oh, you know, what you're doing is non-scientific, doesn't make any sense, you are doing voodoo, all kind of...
Yes.
Now that we have a model of science that can give a ground of what they are doing. So it adds professionalism, you know, confidence in what they are doing.
Right.
And the peace that you are bringing this morning, I think it's absolutely very important. You know,
Critical, yeah.
because we do this extra, I wouldn't say mile, but extra, you know, where we can reach more this ancient model of healing. Because at the core of that, there's a lot of information that still was in the air. You know, we spoke about the I Ching this morning. We can speak about, you know, Ayurvedic medicine, the chakra too. There's so much there that stay just in the air at quantum physics, the way it is now.
Kabbalistic tradition.
Yeah, Kabbalistic cannot explain.
Yeah.
Now with this sacred geometry, this tetrahedron, you know, where you made a 64 grids, and you know, and the way, you know, you come with it, and you explain also how work the torus. It's like, you know, this is kind of the missing link. And what is impressive, you know, we were speaking this morning, and you predict at least 80 events, you know, And now this article is like, you just nail it. There's, after that, they have to do something.
Right,
They
right.
cannot just ignore you.
there's-
I'm writing a book now. You cannot stop that anymore.
That's
because
right.
truth is there.
Right.
And then the result will come with it as soon we do application of that. So
Right, and people recognize that they naturally will recognize fundamental truth, and this is why things like E equals MC square, became something so clear and so popular, and because it's like, oh yeah, like that feels right, energy equals mass, speed of light, and so on. Now we're getting like, but what is mass? What is energy? And so on. Yeah, what is sound? Is it a mechanical radiation or electromagnetic one? Well, it depends. In some ways, you could almost regard electromagnetic radiation as a really high frequency of sound, reverberating in this information structure. And this is definitely a part of more study I have to make, and more, and it's just non-ending.
I'm
right?
hearing something new now.
Yes.
Sound?
Well, because not necessarily sound, but the electromagnetic field and how.
Because it's a vibration.
Yeah, because it's a vibration.
Okay.
And in this model, it's a vibration of the field of energy. So you can imagine, like, you have a vortex here and you have an event horizon, and if you were to like make this, like if you look at the surface of that event horizon, you could see like this membrane is vibrating very, very rapidly at the Planck level. You can imagine that interaction of all these waves creating the electromagnetic, field,
okay.
and it would have a fundamental resonance frequency, right? It would hum like, at certain frequencies for different, and so it's literally like the music of the spheres, from different scales.
Wow.
And so I've been starting to play with these math, and I've been starting to think about how to express it mathematically, and there's more to be done, but it's already coming out with really cool stuff. Like for instance, if I calculate all the surface of all the protons in the universe, right? And then I calculate all the information that's on there, and then I calculate the information that's on the surface of the universe. If the universe is this big bubble with the radius that we observe, then we find that it's a one-to-one relationship, meaning like all the surface of all the protons in the universe every Planck has an analog on the surface of the universe, right? So it's like a harmonic relationship. And so there's all sorts of applications to that. So, there's more to explore there, that's for sure.
St. John Gospel.
Oh.
Au commencement, at the beginning of the world was
The sound, the word.
the
right?
word, the logos or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, absolutely. This like fundamental vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of comes together. It's
then
like
this
a big oscillating universe. So, but it's not necessarily colors we can see,
No.
because our eyes are limited to a
From
very-
maybe out of our spectrum or something.
outside the spectrum.
Yeah.
Just like if you went all the way to gamma, but then all of a sudden, like, there's that whole new spectrum. You know how before we only thought there was the visual spectrum, and then we discover, oh my God, there's infrared and ultraviolet and all this stuff, and then X-ray, and now we have like a larger spectrum. Well, there may be actually even a larger spectrum there.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's right.
And then here's the question: is the atom a black hole? What about the proton? Is there a gravitational singularity there? That's key. Very good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Early on, I realized if everything is a fractal and can be divided, then the energy system in every point, since like there's infinite amount of point, or at least to the Planck level, for our universe, then everything must have the energy dynamics of a black hole. So I started to look, and I thought, well, it would be the center right, gravitational center of all the dynamics, the objects we see. So I looked at a galaxy and I thought, there's got to be a black hole in the middle of that galaxy, right? And at the time, that's 25 years ago. Almost
Yeah,
30
that's
years.
many years ago.
Yeah, it was absolutely not the case. You know, they didn't think so. They
I think
thought-
you were kicked out of a conference, right? For
I
that?
was definitely in trouble in many cases, and many arguments, because at the time it was thought that black holes were really, really rare, and maybe they didn't exist at all. I mean, and most physicists thought black holes is kind of a weird part of Einstein's equation prediction, and you know, they probably don't exist, and you know, and in some ways, you know, we're coming to see that like it's not quite the right picture to think that it's just a thing that's absorbing everything. There's actually stuff coming out, right? And Hawking just came to conclude that just recently as well. But this, so at the time I said, okay, well, you know, I'm going to predict that we're going to find black holes in the middle of galaxies, in all galaxies, and that we're going to find that the black hole was there first, and then the galactic structure was generated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And because it's...
Because you have to start at the point of singularity.
That's right.
Right, where there's like kind of a dot at the beginning or something.
Right,
and then
the center of the spin, right? The shaft that everything spins around. And so, you know, because from my view, the vacuum is spinning. The structure of space-time is already spinning. And what we see as the galaxy is just the stuff is in the spin. Just like when you spin your coffee in the morning and it's black, when you take the spoon out, if you didn't spin it too much, you can't see it spin. But then as soon as you put the coffee in it, then you can see. It makes a galaxy, right? And so the same idea is that, you know, the black hole, the spin is in the structure of space-time, and the stuff that's in it makes it visible to us. So then they eventually found black holes at the center of all the galaxies we looked at, and it's pretty well accepted now that there's a black hole, a supermassive black hole at the center of most galaxies. But as well, they found recently in the last few years that now we're able to see far enough that previously from the galactic formation, the black holes were present. So that the black hole is not the result of the galaxy, but the galaxy is the result of the black hole. And so that, you know, those are predictions I made that are, you know, coming through now. And so to answer his question as well for the atom, what I'm saying is that the proton acts just like a cosmological black hole, where the strong force, it doesn't have the mass of the black hole if you don't consider the energy of the strong force that's holding everything to that proton. But when you do, then you get the exact mass of the black hole. So it's not approximately, it's exact, you know. So there's pretty good chance that's correct, and that you get the right range and all this stuff. But as well, it's saying that black holes are not the monster things that... So when I say the nuclei of the atom, the proton is a black hole, it can give the wrong impression.
Oh yeah, when I heard this first time, I said, you know, I was kind of lost, because you have this kind of picture of the black hole, this monster devouring all the galaxy.
Yeah, sucking everything in.
But, you know, you have to add, and we should look at this online, the torque, you know, the torus picture, because you have to understand this, and this is part of the whole picture, you know.
That's
so
right.
this is how we can
yeah, they're talking about balance. You get a balance relationship between the spin of the black hole and the surface of the black hole, so that you know, when things spin, they pull out. They have centrifugal force. So if you have a balance, then the system is stable.
Exactly.
It's not just sucking stuff in. And even at the galactic level, now they're starting to see closer to the event horizon of black holes, and they're very surprised to see that most stuff actually doesn't fall in because the spin is high enough that it's keeping things
All
in.
depend why there is no article about Nassim. Another concept of Nassim in Wikipedia, the Free World Encyclopedia.
In
But
Wikipedia.
by the way, there is nothing about Dr. Paul Drouin too. You know?
There is? Oh.
Not yet, and maybe I like better not having anything there. You
Right.
know?
Well, yeah, lucky you, because I had some mishap with.
Yeah, I let you answer the question, but doesn't mean this is the reference of everything. You know,
No,
there's
that's true.
people have to understand that too.
Yeah.
But you know,
Well, people
where-
may be surprised to find that actually Wikipedia is quite well controlled. It's not actually anybody that can just write in Wikipedia, and it's very edited and censored. Actually, my work is censored in many different matter. You know, in physics journals and all this. I have difficulties publishing and all this because I'm outside everything. So what happened with Wikipedia is that there was an article about me in Wikipedia, and every few days it would get vandalized. Like some person that would get really upset with me, you know, would start writing, you know, not with me, but with my theories and all this, would start writing all kinds of stuff about me on that. And it would, you know, like many of the editors that typically edit Wikipedia were putting stuff on there that was incorrect or not accurate. And so it eventually became to a point where the controversy was so tremendous, and there was some reason that they could be deleted, so it got deleted, and then it's been deleted since then, and you know, nobody has dared to try to put another entry there. Eventually, hopefully, it will come back around and it will be accurate. There's a lot of controversy.
And in this world of quantum physics, people have to realize there is many point of view, many you know, concept. There is a lot of politics, you know, and we cannot avoid that. And someone who has put his little foot in the research, understand how this world is very difficult.
There is a lot of interest.
Yeah. Einstein, some way years ago, didn't have this kind of dilemma. He came and boom, you know, I think that something was very special because it's like, you know, he made an open eyes to the whole world.
Yeah.
Now this is not where we are exactly.
And he got
yes.
Well, he got the help of Planck. You know, he got the help of somebody that was already very established that said, oh, maybe we should look at this. And then the other people took him seriously because before that, Einstein, you know, was actually laughed at by most physicists. I mean, they didn't, that time is not constant, you know, I mean,
that was huge what you were speaking about.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but since then, many physicists has run with the ball, and they came with all kind of theories, string theory, this theory, this theory. People has to understand that,
right?
And then you come along, and what you put together is like, you know, shifting completely another paradigm.
Right.
And
so it's difficult.
I can understand, you know, it's very disturbing.
It is disturbing.
I was disturbed the first time
People,
I look at it, but then you have to look a little bit deeper, and you know, there's one day or another they cannot deny the research and the mathematics of it, and
right.
and then you know, one day or another that will be absolutely undeniable. So is it true that human mind is this same geometry?
Yes, I think so. You know, I'm saying this loosely, but you could think of the human mind as a quantum computer that's actually interacting with this field. And I like to think of it as a radio, you know, because it's like a crystal oscillator, you know, like the old radio sets where had a little crystal oscillator in it. And it's kind of tuned in there into this fundamental geometry, and you can think of it as it is regulated in the same way that is the proton mathematics I wrote, or other mathematics, where the vortex flow, the dynamics of that field, the literally, the surface to volume ratio, all these things are important, and fundamental to how the regulation of the information is occurring. So you can imagine that if new parts of the brain lights up, it's like more, you can think of it as more surface to volume area. All of a sudden, there is more information that can move through the system. It's like your radio got better resolution, so that now you have like better, crisp, music coming out.
Absolutely.
And so, absolutely, I think that's a really good point. It's a good question.
And I'm thinking about the Congress. I don't know if we can bring this. The work of Dr. Dispenza is very amazing and really it's a perfect fit of what you're speaking about. When the last time I participated to his workshop, he was working with fractal geometry to induce meditation. So we were a group of 300-400, and then visualizing this fractal. And it's kind of an application of what you just speak about.
Wow, that's interesting.
So what do you think about the multiverse theory, multiverse or multi-universe? People speak about, we have all these movies to the parallel universe and world within world and world. From what you said, I think it can fit pretty well.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it depends.
There is no end.
Yeah, exactly. It's clearly, if when you see nature, when you see the natural fractal structure that we see everywhere, and you can see the replication of the dynamics at different scales. I think that it's not a big leap to think of our universe being part of a larger one, and that one being part of a larger one to infinity, that we are part of this multiverse infinite structure. Now, if the person, could be a she, is talking about the literal multiverse theory in terms of what is being said in physics, I think it's partially correct, meaning that, the tendency is to visualize parallel universe, and I don't think they're parallel. I think they're embedded within each other.
Yeah, this is more the puppet, Russian puppet. One inside another one, another one.
Yeah. The Russian dolls.
Yeah.
And so more like that. And so I actually was making calculations recently. I'm really excited about trying to figure out like the birth of our universe, like what the thing we're calling the Big Bang, because that dynamic, imagine that dynamics is occurring at the proton level. Now imagine that proton is taken out of our universe. Like imagine that all of a sudden that one proton gets close to the surface event horizon of our universe, and it gets pulled out, right, when one falls in.
Like a seed.
Yeah, like a seed.
Yeah.
Exactly, like conception. And then...
Yeah, I see where you're going now.
Right.
The seed, the matrix and the seed.
Right.
Because you define, at the same time, it's like you said, the universe is finite within it, and then the within structure is infinite.
Right.
So now you have one seed that get in another matrix, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And now it's experiencing a different pressure differential, a different density in that larger universe. So all of a sudden it would inflate very, very rapidly. So our universe might be one of those seeds that came out from another universe, into that larger universe. Now I'm revealing some of the stuff I'm actually working on, like right now.
Oh boy, oh boy.
And so
we are in the really actual,
Yeah, in the bleeding edge. And so that really kind of, and so far the calculation I made comes out. It comes out right.
Wow.
So it's exciting because it gives you a new idea of the birth of the universe, where you don't just have a Big Bang, you don't know what happened before, now you understand it. It's almost like
The
conception.
mother, the
The
father.
father, exactly.
Oh,
So we
boy.
would be like we came out of a father universe into the mother universe, and then expanded to our size, and the math. The math is great because it starts to tell you, like, you can start to extrapolate how many of these universes is there in our bigger universe. You know, and because now you got the scale relationship, so you can work it all out, and so you can actually theoretically explore things past our universe, which, you know, is definitely a whole other frontier of exploration.
So
Like,
tell me,
during the day and during the night, we're going from one side to the other, right? And so what we think of our dreaming state may be actually an experience of the information that's in the structure of space. We're experiencing it in the state of being connected through our inside instead of
Yeah.
being connected to our outside. And so,
and reorganizing the information, probably.
yeah, maybe integrating.
Integrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so dreaming may not be completely, you know, manufactured from your mind, meaning that, and maybe that's why people have deja vu, you know, like these, where you dream something that happens in the future, and when it happens in the future, you go, oh, I dreamed of that, and you know, it's so clear, like they had in that moment, like, oh, I could smell the smell, and you know, it all comes, and I know what she's gonna say right now because I dreamed it, right, and it's so exact. This might be because you're actually interacting with that field, and actually moving through the timeline in that field in a future timeline, and actually pulling information from a future timeline in that field. That gets a little more
Okay,
complex.
so when you are within, there is no space-time.
There-
You are in this interconnectivity where, you know, there is no space and time. You can access future, or you can be in another place.
There's space but no time, meaning that time is a function. Think about it this way. I mean, there's other physicists as well writing papers that are starting to realize that time is actually a result, not a fundamental principle. But I like to think this way: no memory, no time. Right? If you can't remember anything, if there's no memory, there is no sequential concept, there's no evolutionary, you know, there's no time. And since we
And I
see...
think today, you know, it's about cooperation. You know, you are doing an extraordinary work, and you know, we like to pursue this relation of exchange and
Absolutely.
be at the, ahead of everybody about this information. This is very important because at the end, what is it for us? It's translating healing.
Right.
It's translating new technology and a better understanding, you know, how work, you know, these medicine.
Yeah.
And also to provide a scientific ground.
Right.
So
It's critical.
It's critical.
Yeah.
So I really congratulate you for, you know, what you achieved, because for
Thank
me
you.
it's huge. It's huge. You know, we speak about it. You know, this article you came with, and I think it will be. You know, in few years, you know,
Right.
I'm sure we will look in our library of Word TV, and you know, this I'm very honored today to have you on this program.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree. You know, it's time for everybody to collaborate so that we can work together and increase our capacity to bring this to the world.
Oh yeah, there's so much work to do.
There's so much work to do. And
Absolutely.
there's so much good work that's being done, you know, and there's so many breakthroughs. And people are transforming very quickly. So it's really
Absolutely.
good. Like, we need to pool our resources, everybody together, and everybody out there that's participating by being present, by seeing these things.
And thank you again to you, Nassim.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Mahalo.